There we go.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nick. So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Colleen Ortega, and I'm from Learning Enhancement and Innovation here at the university. And I'm so grateful to see so many of you could join us today, so you can come and hear from Susan about her peer review assignment using feedback routes. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. And while we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands we each call home. I would like to acknowledge the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on here at the University of Adelaide. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present, and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. It would be an understatement to say the past year has been a time of significant change. Within our own university, educators, professional staff, and student partners worked tirelessly to respond to the impacts of the pandemic and pivot towards online and remote teaching and learning. This change really pushed our digital learning ecosystem to its limits. And although there have been a few challenges along the way, this ecosystem has proven itself to be robust and fit to support the delivery of blended online and remote ways of learning. However, our digital learning ecosystem needs to continuously respond and evolve with the changing environment and changing learning needs. And this is what brings us together today for this session. We are looking for a way to address the challenges of supporting peer learning in our digital learning environment, including the stages of peer feedback, review, and evaluation, which has traditionally occurred within formal and informal face-to-face learning experiences. So late last year, Learning Enhancement and Innovation reached out to Feedback Fruits to see how they could support us to address this challenge within our digital learning spaces. And that led us to our pilot of Feedback Fruits. So I'd now like to introduce Nick, although you've already met him now, from Feedback Fruits to share the session agenda for today and introduce Feedback Fruits itself and the peer learning tools. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much, Colleen. Yes, I kind of introduced myself a little bit already. I just will give you a very quick run through what Feedback Fruits is and the peer learning tools. But first, let's have a look at the agenda for today's sessions. First of all, as I said, we're going to have a look at Feedback Fruits very quickly. Then we'll have the most of the time dedicated to the case study by Susan, which ran last summer. It was an intensive summer course, and Susan prepared some amazing supporting slides and have a very good story, in-depth analysis of what went well and the challenges with peer learning. There will be some time for Q&A after the presentations by Susan, where you can just ask any questions that you might have about the about her experience. However, if you have any questions while we're speaking or throughout the session, just put them in the chat, and we'll make sure to address them either after the sessions, or I'll do my best to address them in a follow-up email in case there are many questions asking for same or similar informations. And then eventually we will close off with some practical informations and resources which we will be sharing with you on how to get started with Feedback Fruits, where to find support, and who within the university and within Feedback Fruits can help you with your activities. So very quickly, if we go over Feedback Fruits, we are a Dutch company. We are based in Amsterdam, and we work with higher education institutions worldwide, in the US, in Australia, and in Europe. We work with technical business schools and very large institutions, as well as regional institutions. We are on a mission to make every course more engaging, but we have one very strict rule for ourselves, is that pedagogy always comes first and technology second. So we make sure that all the advantages that come from technologies are at the service of a better and modern pedagogy rather than the other way around. We aim through a suite of different tools to increase student engagement by implementing active learning designs. This means that instead of having a single point of engagement, usually close to the exams or the end of a course, we enable teachers, instructors, instructional designers to create activities that increase engagement throughout a course and keep the engagement of students very high, and therefore increasing their learning and improving their learning experience. We offer a suite of different tools. As you can see on these slides, there are 8 of them, ranging from interactive study materials, interactive presentations, discussion tools, and feedback tools. Today, we're going to focus on 2 of them, group member evaluation and peer review. The case studies will focus specifically on peer review, which is the tool that Susan tested this summer. However, we talked about peer review and group member evaluation as a couple because they work very similarly. The only difference between the two is that one, peer review, enables students to review each other on a piece of work, on a deliverable. This can be a video, a text, an essay, while group member evaluation use peer review to for the review of skills. So, for example, the skills that students demonstrated during a group work. So really, these tools are used and designed to step up your peer learning game and courses, and to give you a tool to make it easier and smoother to organize peer work. We offer within these 2 tools a set of features that you can see summarized in this slide. As I said, we talked about these tools as 2 faces of the same coins. Susan will go in more detail about some of these, for example, the reviewer and submitter anonymity feature. But I think it's important here to mention that we are fully synchronized within your learning management system. So in Canvas, you would find our tools within your Canvas environment, and you will be able to synchronize the grades, for example, to push them directly to the Canvas gradebook, and to use the groups that you've already set up in Canvas. So there is a full synchronizations there. And then a whole array of customizable features such as grading, feedback criteria, the possibility to ask for quantitative or qualitative feedback, and so on. So this is Feedback Fruits and the peer learning tool in a nutshell. If there's any burning questions already now, please just let me know or put it in the chat. And otherwise, I would like to give the floor to Susan to present her experience using the tools. I will be using maneuvering the slides. So Susan, just let me know whenever you want me to skip to the next slides, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much, and over to you, Susan.
That's great. Thank you, Nick. So I'm standing here because I ran a summer intensive course this year, and so I was the first academic to be using the peer review. And I might just point out that I am representing the tool. You can see I'm orange and I'm grape, especially for today. So the course itself, I am program coordinator for a BSc in animal behaviour, and the course itself was on animal management. So it was all aspects of managing, especially dogs and cats that we live close by in urban areas. And it covered everything from barking dogs to dog attacks to how we manage cats and wildlife. So the course itself was an online course with 5 days of face-to-face teaching. It's a third-year course, which I think is important when you think about how the students will cope with the peer review. It's a core course for the animal behaviour students and an elective course for animal science students. So I ended up with 63 students enrolled in the course, which was a little bit more than I'd expected. The next slide, thanks, Nick. So the assignment itself was based on a scenario that the students were given in which they had to deal with a complaint which was made about a dog barking, a neighbour's dog which was barking. And so it fell into the course learning objectives for the students to understand how to approach a problem with barking dogs, and how you look at the interactions between animals and people and try and resolve the conflict. So the students had to look at the different factors that might be causing the dog to bark, and then look at different interventions that could be used to reduce that problem. So quite a complex scenario with more than one right answer. And my goal really was that rather than me having to spend lots of time giving individual feedback, to try and use peer review to up that feedback. And as you'll see from the results, it worked really effectively to that. I'm going over it reasonably quickly, but I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are bits that you want explained better. So the motivation I had, that I heard about feedback fruits, it must have been the end of last year, and that I thought it sounded like it might help me to give the peer review at a reduced workload to myself. And I should also point out here that at the time I used it, because it was still a summer semester course, there hadn't been training or other things. So Paul was great in helping me to set it up initially. But it was simple because I did manage to do all that without a lot of training. So thanks, Nick. The next slide. And I'm not that IT savvy. So the report that students submitted was 1,000 words, and it was based on set questions on the scenario. They submitted the report into feedback fruits, and then they had to peer review 3 other reports from 3 other students. They got those peer review marks. They got all of the comments made by their 3 peer reviewers. And then they had a chance to change their report before they finally submitted it. And that final submission that they made, I graded. So it was both formative in the peer reviews that they got and also summative that I graded their final report. The marks that were associated, so 5% were on the 3 peer reviews that each student did. 5% of their marks were on the peer reviews that they received. So that was the average of 3 different students that reviewed their mark based on the rubric. And then 5% was the final report. I used anonymous reviewing. So both the students didn't know which other students' report they were reviewing, and the peer reviews they got back, they had no idea who did them. And actually I hadn't realized, but I was chatting to one of the students this week, and she said that she thought that she did one peer review and the next time she did it, she was called something else. So I didn't hear anywhere where students found out who was actually peer reviewing their work. The next report, thanks, Nick. Next slide, rather. So you can see here some examples, and the students, you're never quite sure how students will take it, but they actually loved the names they were given. So you can see here, Insightful Grey Grapefruit at the top, and Sincere Umber Banana got the feedback. So there are some examples here. At the top, you can see there's an in-text citation given, and the feedback there on the right, I omit the author's initial in the in-text reference. This error was repeated multiple times in this document. So there was that kind of very specific feedback. The next one you can see, Max is a 3-year-old desexed male border collie due to being a herding breed. And the feedback, while you make an excellent point here, this part of the sentence does not fit in. I would probably omit it entirely or rephrase it. So the students are giving different kinds of feedback, and this is all really constructive. And then at the bottom here, you can see, you mentioned here that only one neighbour complained, but you carried on by saying that a result of that one singular complaint, it's vital to address the behaviour. In this case, you appear to be contradicting yourself, as you start by indicating how it's not important, then end by saying how important it is. So you can see these different levels of feedback, and I was actually blown away by the feedback that the majority of students gave, that it was very high level, very constructive. The next slide, thanks, Nick. I had 3 reviewers, and at the top here, under benefit of having 3 reviewers, you can see that in the rubric I had different criterion, and in this one on the left you can see the average rating is 8 out of 10, and on the right you can see an 8 out of 10, a 9 out of 10, and a 7 out of 10. And that happened a lot throughout the marking, and you can see there that when they average out at 8, I think that's probably pretty close to where the student would need to be. So I actually didn't need to modify those peer review marks very much at all, because where there was an outlier, there were 2 that were very similar. I also did use, and I think this was a beta function at the time I used it, that I got the students to rate or review how useful they found the feedback was that they were given. So you can see here at the bottom box, the overall rating of this review. So you can see that one of them, it was 10 out of 10. They found the feedback really helpful and constructive. Another student only got 4 out of 10, so their feedback wasn't as helpful, and another student got 5 out of 10. So the students would also have seen these ratings and would have known from themselves that some of the reviews were more effective than others. So again, this was part of their learning. The next slide, thanks. So when I rated the feedback itself, so that was 5% of their marks, how good their reviews were of other students. And right at the top in the feedback fruits, you can download an Excel document that has all of the reviews that were made by different students, and then you can sort them. So at that top box, you can see that these were all feedback that were given by a single student. So when I rated their own peer reviews, I looked at all of these, and you can see here, this is an example of a pretty good student peer review, that there's positive feedback on what they did well. There are areas where they could have done more, and it's not just a single statement, that they're elaborating on why it's good or what they could do, which would be better. And then at the bottom, so I mentioned that it was formative in that they could respond to the feedback that was given and then change their final report. And so you can see here the example I used earlier, where Max is a 3-year-old G6 male border collie due to being a herding breed. And you can see here that this is what that sentence looked like in this student's final report and how much better it's reading. The next slide, thank you. So I'm teaching an intensive course at the moment, and a lot of the students that I'm teaching did the summer intensive course. And in the CELTs, they hadn't mentioned feedback fruits a lot, and I hadn't specifically asked them for feedback. So I chatted to one of the students who said how much she'd loved it, and I just did a quick Google form to get some more feedback from them this week. And this was some of their feedback on their impression of the feedback fruits tool. So you can see very straightforward and easy to do. Use, loved how it allowed for anonymity while viewing others' work, gave me more confidence to give honest, constructive criticism. And the student that I chatted with actually said that that was a real deal breaker for her, where she's given peer review before, but she's felt that if she knew the student, she felt sometimes constrained in really giving the feedback on how they could improve. Whereas with this anonymous process, she felt that it really enabled to give full feedback without any issues on thinking about the student that's receiving it, how they'll take it. They did find it relatively easy to use, and where there were comments on not being sure, they found that it was easy to self-correct and easy to change. So overall worked well, would be happy to use it again. Such a good resource and program. I enjoyed using it to provide and receive feedback from others. I also really liked how it was anonymous and allowed us to provide multiple ways of feedback to people. So they could rank them, they could give comments, and there were good and could be better options as well. So they liked that full suite that they could use. And you can see here at the bottom, loved it. So the students overall, I haven't filtered this. I really didn't get any negative feedback from this, and possibly the only students who responded were those that loved it. The others might have been neutral, but this is not filtered feedback. The next slide, thanks. And what did you learn when doing the peer review? Because part of my rationale for getting them to do the peer review is that I knew this is a complex problem and they might come up with some solutions, but other students would come up with solutions equally valid. And if you're just in your island and only know your report, you're not learning from all of the work that other students have done. So once I peer reviewed others' work, it made it easier to criticise my own work against the rubric. So the other point is that often you give them a rubric and they don't really engage with it, but when they're peer reviewing other students' work, it makes them understand the rubric much better. I love this one. Assessing other students' work is hard, and how much I appreciate my own educators spending the time to give me constructive feedback. I promise you I didn't pay a student to write that in. That was a joyful one to read. How to read and critique work well and effectively. I liked how we could rate paragraphs and sections out of 10, I think it was. It helped provide more feedback to the person. It definitely helped improve my own grade by considering perspective answers that I hadn't considered. It's lovely to see that because that was one of my goals in using it. And how to mark correctly, loved it. The next slide, thanks. So the key learnings and takeaways that I got from it were that the peer reviews were very high quality and they did provide much greater learning to the students. So it was two-way. They learnt from reading the other students' reports and from peer reviewing them. And they would learn from reading things, other reports with points that they hadn't thought of, and they realized that was a really good point. And they also learnt from the peer reviews that they got from students. I couldn't have set up the peer review in the time that I had. This was done in a really short time frame. I virtually put it together and launched it, and I just had to wait and see if it worked, and it did. It saved me so much time. I could not possibly have done it myself. It did all of the randomizations, any so minor things where I thought, what if a student handed in their report a little bit late? Will it be able to cope with that? And it did. It was relatively easy to set up. I did find it's better designed for the received peer reviews. So they got 3 different marks, which was their peer review mark on their report. And when it came time for me to mark their peer reviews, the easiest way to do that was in the Excel spreadsheet, but it wasn't easy to do that within the tool itself, looking at the individual students. The platform itself is wonderful for looking at the received peer reviews. And the Excel spreadsheet did help me with those received peer reviews. But I would definitely use the tool again. I found it useful. I found the peer review process overall really positive for the students. You can tell from that feedback. It was interesting. This was a 3rd year class, so they've had a couple of years to receive feedback from instructors and to do their reports. And I will be using it in a very large 1st year course in semester 2 this year. And I think I'll have to use it a little bit differently and scaffold it a little bit more. I'm thinking about doing that as a group assignment rather than individual peer reviews. But I was really very positively surprised by the peer review and how well it went with this 3rd year class. So thank you, Nick. That might have been my last slide, I think.
I think this is now. Thank you very much, Susan, for this. It's very good to hear your feedback and to see the feedback from the students. I'm glad you mentioned that you didn't cherry pick the best feedback, because that was also the question that I had. But yeah, it's very good. And I picked up actually on 3 things that you mentioned that really resonate with the work that we do to build the tools. One was the anonymity, which seems something that the students really appreciated, and creating this safe learning environment where people don't feel any pressure or any barrier in giving feedback and receiving feedback, because it's completely anonymized. It's something that's very important for us, and I'm glad to see that the students appreciate that and got the value out of it. And then another thing, maybe more subtly that more subtle that we see in many of the case studies we run is that increased awareness of the rubric through evaluation of others and assessment of others. And in fact, there is even a piece in which we can ask students to assess themselves against the same rubric before assessing others, which creates that certain level of awareness on how others are going to then review their own work and their own skills before they receive the peer reviews. And then finally, you mentioned about the possibility to have the work set up for groups, which obviously is something that that we support, so that is both the individual and the group aspects of this assignment, which gives room for a lot of configurations. Yeah, thank you very much for this. I've seen a few questions came through the chat, and I would like to see if we can answer some of these. We can maybe do a joint effort. Susan, there's a question from Beth that asks if you provided the students with a rubric or guidelines specific to the assignment for giving their peers feedback.
Yes, so they saw the rubric before and they were actually given the information before the 5 days face-to-face teaching. Their first report was due the first day of face-to-face teaching. And I prepared a PowerPoint where I just spoke about the rubric, how to use it, and also a little bit about how to give feedback. So being constructive, not making personal comments.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Beth?
Yes, thank you, Susan.
Thanks. Then I see a question from Simran, but actually this is more of a technical questions for Kim and for the team at LEI about accessing the testing course. We can sort this after the call and give you full access, of course. Then Haley asks if you had to set up the rubrics in Feedback Fruits or if you can import from Canvas or Excel. I assume, Susan, you did set the rubric up in Feedback Fruits, and I'm saying that because that's the only way to do it for now. So the rubrics have to be set up in Feedback Fruits. They cannot be directly imported. However, they can be copied over as many times as you want. So the first time you will have to build a rubric starting from an existing one that you have in Excel or in Canvas. However, for any recurring assignment, you will be able to copy from an existing activity all the criteria and then tweak the structure or the details of the rubrics for the new assignment. I'm interested to ask Susan how you found the setting up of the rubrics, if there's anything there, any insights that you can give to your colleagues on the actual setting up.
Yeah, so I did set up the rubric in Feedback Fruits, and I would recommend if you're using it to go in and have a look at the rubrics on that and set it up, because every time you set up a rubric in a software system, they're usually a little bit different, and you could waste time by perfecting a rubric on Canvas that's not going to translate across. So I found the rubric tool really easy to use in Feedback Fruits, and I didn't have any students saying, I don't understand that criterion, how I mark that. I kept it pretty simple, then it worked well.
Thank you very much. One thing that I didn't mention earlier about the rubrics is that they offer the possibility to combine qualitative and quantitative feedback in different measures. So you can choose to have only, for example, a scale rating or a common criterion, so purely quantitative or qualitative, or to mix the two and ask the students to grade on a 1 to 10 scale their peers. While at the same time leaving a qualitative comment such as those that we have seen in Susan's slides, which by the way will be available to you after the session so that you can have a look. I see Gala has another question asking if any of the students that felt offended by the feedback or any feedback that you, Susan, have read that you felt was written a bit harshly. Or maybe inappropriately, I add to Gala's point in this regards.
So that was one thing that I was very conscious of, and this was one thing that the online tool enabled very well, to be able to go in and look at all of the specific feedback that was given. And I didn't find any examples. The only one I got was a student that was slightly annoyed that was right at the beginning of using the tool, where I think she'd put the feedback in the wrong bits, and the report that was being reviewed couldn't, there were comments where there was an error and it was the wrong bit that it was highlighting. So it wasn't an error, and they just got a bit annoyed that they were out of sync a little bit, the comments. But students went back in and they were able to correct that once they'd learned how to use the tool. And that was the only example. So I think depending on what your report's like, what your student cohort is like, it could always happen, and you would need to monitor, would always monitor peer review like this. But in this particular case, I didn't get any. As far as marking harshly, so if you can, I found it worked really well having 3 peer reviews that were given, because it filtered out if there was one. And there were a few occasions where, say, a student for a criterion, 2 students gave a 9 and an 8, and then another student gave them a 4. And I removed the 4. I went in and looked and saw if that wasn't a correct one, then I removed it. But I didn't have any students coming to me and saying, I got marked really harshly by that peer reviewer. Can you go in and change it? I think the way the marks all came out, they were very happy with them. And I should say as well, if any of you are using it and would like to have a quick Zoom with me, I'm happy to show you the course or add you as a viewer of the course if you wanted to go in and just have a look at it and how it worked.
That's great. Thank you very much also for this this last thing, Susan. That's I'm sure will be very precious for anyone in the call who's interested to try the tools. Back to the point of inappropriate comments, I would like to add also that as an instructor or as an admin role, let's say within a course, you would have the possibility to override any comments that you find inappropriate. So if there's anything that you spot that is happening that is a bit off mark and then you're concerned about, you can remove it altogether, or go to the student and talk to them directly, because of course the anonymity works only between the student, among the students, and the teachers always have a full overview of what was going on and who is responsible for what comments. So there is that aspect. There is the aspect, thank you very much, Susan, for mentioning, of sort of educating the students to giving appropriate feedback and constructive feedback, and that level of trust that they will be doing a good job if they are given the tools to do a good job and to give appropriate feedback. And finally, from the student's point of view, there is a possibility to report through an automatic feature comments that is perceived as inappropriate, and that would be flagged directly to the instructor, which can then check the content and decide whether it's inappropriate or not. And that is a completely anonymous feature. The reviewer won't know anything of this. It's just a flag that goes straight from the student to the teacher, and sort of yeah, just to flag any situation that might be a bit off what we were expecting. There is a question from Melanie that asks if Feedback Fruits allows for submissions of different formats, for example, videos. The answer is yes. We allow for actually quite a wide range of formats, from text to video to audio, to URL pages and websites. This is particularly relevant in the case, for example, of software engineering and software design. And also there is the possibility to combine different formats. So you can ask students to submit a video and an essay together as pieces of work, and only with the submissions of these two formats, the submissions will be completed within the system. So there is also that level of sort of asking for not only a certain type of format, but also the right amount of submissions. For example, if it has to be exactly 2, or a minimum of 2 submissions, or a maximum of 3 submissions per each student or per each group. So there's definitely a lot of flexibility there in terms of the media and in terms of the formats that we support. The slides is another one, like PowerPoint slides is another one that comes very often, which we support. So definitely a lot of flexibility there. I don't see, as I was going to say, I don't see any other question in the chat. Thanks you, Simona, for this question. Can students provide their feedback using AV comments? I'm not sure, is that like audio video, you mean? Okay, so there is the possibility to give comments by either recording a voice note, which is done directly through the platform. And so instead of typing at the bottom, a bit like you have in WhatsApp, just to make it clear to everyone, you would have a little microphone you can press and send the voice recording. However, this might give away the anonymity feature, so just be mindful of that. And in terms of video, there is the possibility to attach a external file to any of the comments, actually in any of the fields that students can fill in. So they can indeed they can record something on their phone, for example, and attach it to their comment. I hope this reply was an answer to your question, Simona. And if there is any other questions, please feel free to unmute yourself as well and ask directly to Colleen, myself, or to Susan. And also I see that Kim and Paul are in the call as well, and I would like also to acknowledge the work that they have done in setting up the pilot and creating the resources that are currently available in Box. And am I saying correctly? Do you call it Box? Yeah, and which I went through them like last week, and they are amazing. I just so thorough. There are screenshots of each phase on how to set up the assignment from scratch within your Canvas environment, and I will share the link in a second. I see there are no other questions, so I can actually move on to this part, the how to get started. As I said, there is a wealth of resources available to you. The first two that I would like to mention are the dedicated learning and enhancement and innovation webpage that Iman created recently, which collects all the resources. Thanks, Colleen, for putting it in the chat. I will also follow up with an email so that you have the link there as well. It's a text page with lots of hyperlinks that links to resources that you have available on how to set up the assignments. He has contact details for the team who's managing this pilot at the University of Adelaide. That is Colleen, Paul, Kim, and Iman. And so a lot of resources in there. Specifically, the one I just mentioned, the Box link, which has a PDF of how to set up an assignment from scratch made from Paul, and some video resources by Kim, which are extremely helpful and thorough, and I really recommend you have a look at those. And then of course you can get in touch with us. So the learning design team have his own contact details, which I'm sure you're aware of, but also you can get in touch with myself. I will leave you my email address, and you can get in touch with myself. I am managing this pilot on behalf of Feedback Fruits, and I'm happy to help you or direct you to the right resources anytime you need. And then finally, I would like to mention one aspect that is, I think, often overlooked, but is the real superpower of a Feedback Fruit, I would say, which is the support center that we have. So we have a chat which is available 24-hour a day, 5 days a week, so Monday to Friday, in your also in your time zone, of course, and it's our colleagues, and they are able to help you within 5 minutes. So regardless the time difference, which might come into play if you email me during the night, I might not be able to reply to you straight away. They are always available, and we have a response time of less than 5 minutes. So if you're having like a question or any sort of like a hurdle in setting up your assignment, you can just get in touch with them. They will know what link you are working on, and they will be able to help you straight away. And this chat is available within each of the tools that you use. So it's very easy, and it's directly within the tools you'd be working with. And I think this is all from my side. I would like to thank a lot Susan for helping us in building this amazing case study, for testing the tools in the very first place, for collecting the feedback from the students, and for today's session. Thank you very much. Has been great and greatly informative. It's always great also for us to hear the stories directly from the teachers.
Thank you, Nick. That was my pleasure.
Thanks. And then I would like to give the floor back to Colleen for some closing remarks. I will also stop sharing the screen. And as I said, I will follow up with all the resources that we mentioned today and in an email. And I'm looking forward to seeing you using Feedback Fruits very soon.
Thanks, Nick, for facilitating today's session. Very much appreciated. And of course, a very big thank you to you, Susan, for your experimental mindset and giving it a try when no one else had tried it before at the university. So for those of you who have attended, if you're already kind of inspired to start using the tool now in your courses, please let us know in the chat, and it means that we can make sure you get all the information as soon as possible out to you today, so you can start playing along. So really keen to know if you're interested in the pilot. We are also really curious to know, even if you're not able to participate in the pilot, if you think this tool is going to be useful to you in learning and teaching in the future or later this year. We really want to know if this should become a permanent feature of our digital ecosystem here, integrated in with my uni. So really interested to hear your feedback about what you think is needed. The time frame for the pilot, and I didn't write it down, it's going to leave my brain, is the 1st of September.
Yes, it is actually. We're giggling because I just texted Colleen on the chat. Yes, so like the pilot is currently running up until the end of August, and so 31st of August, and which is, I believe, time to get to the end of the next trimester. Is that correct? Or the 3rd trimester? Is that correct, Colleen?
Yes, so it's enough time for semester 1 courses and try 2 up to exams. The assignments don't disappear, by the way.
Exactly.
But what we're really doing is trying to gather enough feedback and data so we can make a really good business case for getting this tool over the, at least sign in for the next 4 years, hopefully. And we can keep going with the amazing work that's happening so far and keep receiving that student feedback that we've received. Also, if you'd like to stay informed about any future pilot opportunities across any of the new learning technologies that we're exploring this year, I'd also encourage you to get in touch. You can either send an email to me or to learning@adelaide.edu.au, and we'll make sure you stay informed of what's coming up next. So thank you so much for coming to the session today. Have an amazing week ahead.
Thank you very much, Colleen. Sorry, just one last thing. Sorry to steal the last sentence from you. Someone just said Haley and Elise just said in the chat that they are looking forward to use the tools. They've already set up assignments that will go live in week 7. So that's great. That's great to hear. And we'll follow up with you. And I know Dimitra, I've seen it in the activities. We've talked about this before. I've set up for the dentistry course. Something that will go live soon, I believe. The first assignment has already been done, yes. And if you have any question, Dimitra, just don't hesitate to get in touch and we can discuss this. We also meet regularly with the team at LEI. So if you feel like you would like to discuss anything more in depth, do not hesitate. You can join our sessions and we'll be happy to help you and to support you in there as well. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Colleen and Susan again, and I will speak to you soon.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.